All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of the PokerNews Podcast. I'm Chad Holloway, joined by Sarah Herring. We are here to do part one of our two-part series of the top 10 stories from 2021. We're going to go through stories 10 through 6 in this episode, and then next week we will finish it off with the top 5. Sarah, I don't know about you, but I love this time of year because it gives us a time to go back and reflect and look back on a lot of the big stories. And this year there were certainly quite a few big ones.
Yeah, I think it was, we came out of what was, the year of essentially just online poker, which actually I think was even more newsworthy than I expected it to be. But for all things considered, it was more of a chill, laid back. We were all on our couches for a year, and 2021 came at us like a hurricane. We got so many exciting news stories. We're back to live poker again. People are playing, and maybe now we're unback to live poker too. Even like the EPT Prague just not happening now at the very last minute. This is a year for stay on your toes. We never know what's gonna happen, and in the poker world, a lot did.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we'll get into it in just a second. But before we do, I want to thank a sponsor right at the top, and that is partypoker. Their Millions Online is back. It's partypoker's most prestigious series. It started back on December 9th. It's running through December 30th with a $5 million guaranteed main event that will run from Sunday, December 12th. And you can buy in direct for $5,300, but there are also a lot of chances to win your seat via phase satellites starting at a single cent. That's 1 penny. You can win your way into the $5,300 main event. And there are 2 mega satellites every Sunday, each with a combined 30 main event seats guaranteed. So don't miss out on those. Satellites are running now. You can start your journey to the Millions Online main event today at Party Poker. All right, Sarah, speaking of journeys and trying to satellite your way in, you and I have been doing that a little bit on ClubGG. We talked about it in the holiday gift guide episode. And the launch of ClubGG is our number 10 story of 2021. And that's because they made a big splash, especially in the US, because in the US, we don't have a lot of legitimate regulated online poker options unless you live in specific states. I don't. I live in Wisconsin. You don't. You're down there in Texas. But ClubGG gives us that ability because of its business model. It's a subscription-based, $49.99 a month to join ClubGG and compete for live seats to live events. So right now, December, it's been all about card player cruises, MSPT, and Rudgood events. But you can also play on ClubGG for free. We have a Club PokerNews where we had the PokerNews Cups a couple times in 2021. So you can compete, you can have fun. And then if you want, you can do the premium upgrade, the subscription-based model. And Sarah, I don't know about you, but it's been a lot of fun, not only to compete, but just to see the stories that came out of it. I know that during the World Series of Poker, there were people who won their way to the main event via ClubGG.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't get my finger up on the mouse. But this, honestly, if it was just my personal list, this would be even way, way higher on the list, because I think for those of us in the US, we have just been waiting. The question is never ending. When are we going to be able to play again? When can we get online again? And, we've seen a few victories, of which some of those we will talk later on in this episode and in other episodes. We've seen some victories, but it's just so location dependent. And for a lot of us, we're not going to be able to uproot our lives, but we still would like to play poker and play poker with some stakes, at hand, like something to actually work towards or work for. And I'm trying to get on the card player cruise right now. In December, GGPoker is giving away more than 100 seats, 54 seats to an MSPT, 50 seats to the Run Good series. Both of those are going to be at different casinos, but both in San Diego in January and February, and then 5 seats to a 7-day card player cruise. This is just one example of what a month could look like on GGPoker. So you pay your $49.99 and you're able to jump into as many tournaments as you would like. I've been having so much fun with it. And for me, even when I made my first video about ClubGG a few days ago, I was trying to think what I wanted to title the video. And I think I ended up titling it something like the best innovation in poker in the last few years. Because for me, it is like, it's been more than a decade since I've been able to, without fear, play poker online. And so I'm super excited. And this for sure had to be on our list. I'm sad it's only 10, but I'm not in charge of the list making.
Yeah, it's definitely needed to make the list because it started in 2021. It made a big splash, and it's only going to set the pace moving forward into 2022 and beyond. Look out for big things on ClubGG, and I mean, get on board with it. Seriously, like now is the early days of it. You can win some great seats and events, but as this picks up steam, there's just going to be more and more players to compete and whatnot. So now is definitely the time to get in, and you can do that via PokerNews. And if you want to check it out, like I said, you can for free by just downloading the app and playing in Club PokerNews and getting a taste for it before you decide whether or not you want to do the subscription.
It's online like talking poker. About overlays. Sorry, I'm just going to throw this out there really quick because last night I was wanting to get into a tournament and there was only 17 people or something in the tournament. It was like the easiest way to get my step 2 ticket ever. And 6 months from now, that might not be the case. So it's like, if you guys want to, now's the time for sure. Get in on the early days. And it's kind of like, I see it like having an overlay basically. Okay, sorry, keep going.
No worries. Well, online poker, we were just talking about it, and that's our number 9 story. It was the launch of online poker in Michigan. This happened in 2021, right at the get-go, back in the first month at the end of January. PokerStars became the first operator to launch operations in the Wolverine state. We had BetMGM follow a couple months later in March, and then both sites started hosting different series. You had the MI Coop on PokerStars. You had the inaugural online poker series at BetMGM. More recently, you had the NBoss Poker Series that was hosted in conjunction with Darren Elias, which ran in a trio of states, including Michigan. You had the MI Scoop event. I know that 888 and WSOP.com announced plans that they're eyeing up Michigan also in 2021. Now, I don't think they've gotten up and running there yet, but they're certainly hoping to do that. That might have to spill into next year. But it seems, Sarah, that every year we're kind of getting one state on board with the online poker, right? It was Pennsylvania, I think, in 2020. Now we have Michigan. Who knows what's going to be next? I know that it's slow going, right? So there's only 5 states right now. There's Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Nevada, and Delaware are the only ones that have online licensed online poker. And so it's been 10 years since Black Friday happened. This year, 2021, was the 10-year anniversary back in April of it. And so to only have 5 states, we're averaging one every 2 years. It's like, man, when is this going to start picking up speed? And I think I'm hopeful for the future because of a couple things. Number one is the rise of sports betting, right? A lot of states are considering sports betting, and that will be the opportunity for a lot of these sites like PokerStars or BetMGM to try to attach and push for online gaming as well, like online poker. And then the other is what we just mentioned, our number 10 story was ClubGG and GG's poker's desire to do stuff in the United States. I mean, they're growing, they have a lot of power, a lot of influence. And so I think that they could help push the ball along a little bit more. And then hopefully we get a couple other states to start adopting it, and maybe more will fall. We've always talked about the dominoes falling, and so far the dominoes are starting to get set up, and there's a few that have tipped over, but it hasn't had that chain reaction effect like we've hoped.
Well, and I think if we look at Michigan, the biggest indication that we can take from Michigan's response is that we are ready for this as a nation all across the board. Michigan, I think the biggest thing that was so surprising to me was how big a lot of these events are and how fast people jumped in and adopted Michigan as like a place to play poker. They were ready. They were waiting. The numbers in the tournaments showed that. Things went off seamlessly for the most part with even, the technology, the ability for people to be able to play. And so if Michigan is any indication of what the United States should look like, I would say we are ready, willing, and waiting. Let's tip the dominoes, guys. Let's get it going.
Well, moving away from online poker. The number 8 story is more in general in the poker world, because there were, unfortunately, every year, and this is something that I don't necessarily like looking back on, but it is a good opportunity to remember those that we lost in the following year. And unfortunately, in 2021, there were quite a few poker individuals that did pass away throughout the year. We're going to go over many of them right now. And one that stood out to me, and it happened back in January, so right at the beginning of 2021, was the passing of Howard Andrew, aka Tahoe. He was an elder statesman, if you will, of the poker world. He was born in 1934, so he passed away at the age of 86, and he was just a guy who was a stalwart in the poker world. He played back in the early days. In fact, he was well known for having played the World Series of Poker main event for 45 years in a row, the longest streak ever, 1974 to 2018. And that's even longer than Doyle Brunson, because Brunson boycotted the WSOP from 1999 to 2002 because of the Binion family dispute. And so Tahoe had this record. He's a 2-time bracelet winner. He's just a true legend of the game. And unfortunately, we lost him in 2021. And he was such a nice guy. I had gotten to know him a few times over the years, and he just loved the game. And he's really just, I don't know how to say this exactly. Like, I hope I can be like Howard Tahoe Andrew, where I just love the game for decades on end, and I'm an old man, that I'm still competing, that I'm still having fun, and that I'm still rubbing elbows with everybody up until the very end. And he certainly did that.
It actually looks, I feel like we lost a lot of people in 2021, actually.
I know. I put together this list that we're going over right now, and I was like, damn, this has been a rough one for sure.
Yeah. So we lost Northern California poker player David Beast Valdez at just the tender age of 29. Just so crazy. And what I was struck by, I didn't know him, but what I was struck by most when I read this article, when it came up, was just the poker world's response to losing him. And just, it seemed like what a wonderful, warm, kind, funny, friendly person he was to play poker with, which I think is what we can hope for from all poker players. And yeah, what a sad thing to lose someone at such a young age.
Yeah, he was well known and well respected in the Northern California region. And that's what the thing is with a lot of these poker players, right? We're going to talk about some big names who have passed away this year in a little bit that were known throughout the world. But a lot of these guys were more kind of known in their region, if you will, well respected in the casinos or the tours that they frequented. One that sticks out for me was Jim Petzing, who was a Las Vegas grinder, well known at the Run-It-Up Reno series. I think he finished runner-up in the WSOP circuit Planet Hollywood to Michael Trevette a few years ago. He had a long battle with chronic lung cancer. He even wrote a book called Breathe about it. And Jim was just a great guy. Jamie Kerstetter and I featured him as a guest on the LFG podcast back in the day. And it was just a really nice guy. Unfortunately, he did pass away back in June. And just that one was a big gut punch, I know, to a lot of people, because everybody loved Jim Petzing.
Well, we lost someone from, sorry guys, I've been sick, so I'd be sometimes throwing that cough drop in the mouth and then spitting it back out. Irish poker champion and the winner of the 1999 World Series of Poker, Noel Furlong, who died at 83. And it's interesting because when I was reading more about him, he was born on Christmas, as we've spoken about in our last episode, the old Christmas birthday. But that's where the name Noel came from. So I wonder, did they call him Noel, or did they just say, okay, Noel, but fine, it came from that. Anyways, he amassed a pretty substantial record as a poker player and someone who really went head to head with the biggest and best names in poker and came out on top quite frequently. And, I think there's a pretty big Irish poker community. And so clearly someone who who spearheaded the way for fellow Irishmen, and he died peacefully at home, which I think is the dream for all of us, right?
Yeah, the WSOP even told Poker News at the time of his passing, Mr. Furlong helped put the world in the history of the World Series of Poker. Like you said, coming over from Ireland and winning the main event in 1999. Definitely another kind of legend of the game. He was a businessman, very successful in Ireland, so he didn't play poker full time. He made very few appearances, especially in the last couple of decades. So he might not be well known amongst poker fans, but he was well known within the community and those who know the history of the game. I will be sad that I never had the opportunity to interview him or to chat with him as a former main event champ, but he did pass away, as Sarah said, peacefully at the age of 83. Another one that we lost this year, and Sarah, I know this one took you by surprise. I don't think you realized that we had lost him in 2021, and that is poker pro Matt Marafiati, who back in August died of an apparent suicide. A very tragic story. Matt Marafiati battled mental health issues for a long time, and that's pretty well documented in the poker world. And unfortunately, it came to a very tragic end. He had a young son who I know meant the world to him, and Matt Marafiati was one of these guys who, back in the day, 10 years ago or so, was kind of one of the ones to watch, if you will, one of the young superstars of poker. And he's had his successes and what have you, both online and live, and just, he went by ADZ124 online, and just to pass away at the age of 32, another one that we lost way too soon.
I feel like there was so much drama. That's why I was interested and excited, because Mama is a conspiracy theorist anyways about basically everything, because Matt Marafiati was also always saying, if I die, you guys better dig deep because there's all these people coming for me. And I don't know, okay, maybe he was mentally ill. Apparently that was well documented. Or maybe the Illuminati was coming for him and now we've all missed it. And maybe there's more to dig deeper. I'm just saying, if we're doing our job as journalists, I didn't know that Matt passed away, but maybe someone should do a documentary or something, and we can just make sure that we uncovered all of the possibilities.
Well, another one that we lost in 2021, who I think deserves a documentary or a movie about his life, is, and this one was very shocking, was six-time bracelet winner Layne Flack, back-to-back Flack, passed away at the age of 52 after an apparent overdose at his home. Layne Flack was a character of the game. He was nominated this year for the Poker Hall of Fame. He was a guy who just tore it up in the late 90s into the early 2000s. He won all six of his bracelets from 1999 to 2008, and just loved to have a good time. He was, quite the partier and whatnot, and struggled in that regard. And he's cut from the same cloth as Gavin Smith, with whom the poker world lost a few years back. And this one came unexpectedly and too soon. And, it happened back in July, a few months before the World Series of Poker, and I know that his presence was sorely missed. And to me, this was definitely one of the hardest ones to take in 2021, the hardest passings, and just that it was such a big name in such a young age, just 52 years old, and in such a unexpected manner. I remember when the news broke that it just sent shockwaves throughout the poker community. And I know that I personally missed seeing Layne at the World Series of Poker, seeing that infectious smile, and still condolences to his family, to his daughter Haley. I think Layne Flack is just somebody that needs to write a book, or Sarah, like you say, do a documentary or something, because that was a very exciting and rich life for just 52 years of age. And I know I'd read that biography for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, where they say the flame goes big and then goes out too fast. There's not enough fuel to keep it going, because he was definitely a character, and one of the people that I remember interviewing first, that I was kind of nervous and excited to interview, and he never disappointed with his charisma. on camera, and someone else who I think had a different kind of charisma. And I think in the poker world, we're constantly trying to find people from outside of the traditional poker space to be advocates for poker. And I think Norm Macdonald became one of those for the poker world. He was such a deadpan, straight ass comedian, which is exactly the kind of comedy that I can get behind, the kind of stuff that I really like to see. And he made such a splash in the poker world and made such a difference for poker players. For example, Joe Stapleton, I know also, who has pursued comedy, made a really lovely post about Norm. And I think he was pretty publicly battling cancer, but it still felt surprising.
No, he was. It was very private. Like, and he didn't let anybody know, and that's why it was so surprising. Yeah, it was a well-kept secret. No, hardly anybody knew, and that's why when he did pass away, it was so shocking.
Out of nowhere. Yeah, I was so surprised. Like, what? And then to find out it was cancer. And I think it was kind of similar with Mike Sexton, right? Where it was like, how could this be? Like, wait, how could this happen when nobody knows?
And Norm Macdonald's legacy is he's going to be remembered within the poker world for sure, but he's not going to be remembered for poker, right? He had such a career in comedy, being on an SNL and in movies. Dirty Work is one of my all-time favorite comedies, and I loved his sense of humor and his stand-up, and so he's going to definitely be remembered for that. But for those of us in the poker world, we shouldn't forget the contributions that he made, just being a celebrity and shining a light in the game. He hosted a season as a commentary for High Stakes Poker back in the day and such. And he played in games. He was an ambassador, and I certainly appreciate that. And in that same vein, we had Ed Asner, just an all-time iconic actor. 91 years old when he passed away. He had a career dating back decades. He was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show back in the 1970s, and he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, and his career in Hollywood and film is too far to go into here. But in the poker world, he was a longtime poker enthusiast and advocate for the game, and would host the Ed Asner and Friends Celebrity Poker Night, a longtime charity event in the industry. It usually was live. In the last few years, it moved online because of the COVID situation. But just Ed Asner seemed to be a super nice guy and just loved the game of poker and did a lot for it for many, many years. So to lose him, to lose like Norm Macdonald, it's certainly sad to lose some of that more mainstream celebrity support that poker gets to enjoy when guys like this, like Ed Asner and Norm Macdonald, love this game that we all do.
Yeah, and they, of course, help with that charity element of poker, which I think is often overlooked, but very, very large. I know I actually think I've played in a couple tournaments that were quote unquote Ed Asner tournaments, or places where he would invite other celebrities to play poker. And the same Norm Macdonald, I think, was known for sort of hitting up that charity poker circuit. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the next guy we're going to talk about, I think it's a good poker trivia question, is we know that Phil Hellmuth won the World Series of Poker main event in 1989 by defeating Johnny Chan heads up, denying Johnny Chan his record third main event win in a row. Such an iconic, legendary story in the poker world. But do you know who finished third to Chan and Phil Hellmuth? And that was one Don Zewin, who would go on to face Hellmuth again when Hellmuth won one of his Raz bracelets. I think it was Zewin he beat heads up. And Don Zewin was one of those guys. He passed away. I learned about this during the World Series of Poker. It was very sad. I believe it was COVID related. And it was he is just a grinder for decades. He didn't ever win a bracelet, but he was always out there competing. Like I said, he finished third in that main event. He came close to winning bracelets on many occasions, and he was just a consummate grinder, playing cash games, playing tournaments. I would see him every year at the World Series of Poker, and I always made it a point to say hello, because the fans might not know who Don Zewin is, but anybody who's been around the game long enough knew who he was, had a respect for him, and to learn of his passing was certainly very sad for me. In total, he had 38 cashes at the WSOP for 1.8 million in live tournament earnings. So, he will be missed by many. And there's a great article in there where Phil Hellmuth remembers Don Zhu, and I highly recommend people check that one out.
And most recently, and this one again was such a surprise to me, Dusty Schmidt, who you may remember as Leather Ass.
one of the greatest online screen names ever.
So good. Is reportedly passed away at just 40 years old. He was formerly a member, and this is where I first met him, of PokerStars team online. He wrote poker books. He was one of the, original grinders, if you will, and really just a super nice guy, a super warm guy. He was very open to the poker media. It's really shocking.
Yeah, it was, this one was just a few days ago. We don't know the cause of death officially, but it was well known that he had suffered from some heart trouble. In fact, that derailed his golf career earlier in his life. And so it's speculated that might have played a part in his passing. But this one was definitely a shocker. He had been out of the game for the most part for a decade or so, but still left his mark with the books, like you said, with being a team online for PokerStars and just being one of the OGs of online poker. So certainly sad to lose Dusty Schmidt, as well as everybody else that we talked about here on the podcast. And apologies if we missed anyone. It does seem like every year after I do this in memoriam piece, somebody will reach out and unfortunately inform us that maybe somebody else had passed away as well. And hopefully that won't be the case this year. Hopefully the list will be much shorter in 2022. But probably not. Yeah, that's the tough part, is every year I know these pieces are coming, and just do my best to honor them and remember what they did in poker. So Sarah, before we go on to the last two stories in this episode, let's take a quick moment and hear from somebody on Team GG tell us about one of their initiatives.
Hey, I'm Fedor Holtz, and I'd like to tell you about Fish Buffet, GGPoker's amazing rewards program. You join Fish Buffet the minute you sign up and start collecting fish points by playing real money poker or casino games. The amount of fish points you earn determines your rank in the program, and also the amount of cash rewards you will be paid. The higher your rank, the better the rewards, with up to 60% in cashback available. Whether you're happy as plankton or want to swim with the whales, Fish Buffet has rewards for everyone, and it's all automatic. Not a GG poker player just yet? Come on and jump in today. Get these Fish Buffet points.
All right, we are back to talk about our number 7 story of 2021, and that is basically the return of live poker. I know this is a big topic, and it's, look, 2020 was all about the pandemic, COVID, everything was shut down. We didn't know what live poker was going to be like, if and when it was going to return. But then we started to see a little bit at the end of 2020. There were a few events, but really it was 2021 where things started to pick up again. I know the MSPT started hosting events. Best Bet Jacksonville got in on the mix, and then we just kind of picked up from there. Sarah, are there any big events that stand out to you? I know one for me, one that I really think was indicative of live poker returning in 2021, happened this summer when the World Series wasn't taking place. The Wynn stepped up and held the Wynn Millions. It was the first ever $10,000 buy-in event, $10 million guarantee, and it was won by somebody I know that is very near and dear to us. Mr. Christy Arnett won Andrew Moreno.
That's funny, because I thought you were joking at first when you were like, oh, were there any that stood out? Because I was going to be like, yeah, the World Series happened again. If you might remember, it just was only last month. But you're right. I was sweating that event so hard. Andrew worked so hard to get there, and he has been coaching other people for years, and he jumped on and got a fantastic coach and started moving into this high roller space. And I know you talked to him, but he just has a wonderful story and a wonderful attitude. And obviously he's my best friend's husband. So I was sweating that one pretty hard.
I was there. I was at that event, and I thought it was very special. They're going to do another one in 2022. I've heard tell that it might be in March, but that Win Millions, if they do a Global Poker Awards, that should definitely be considered for event of the year because it was special. It was exciting. There were some great storylines that came out of it. And you've seen a lot of players there competing, Daniel Negreanu, Eric Seidel, guys like that who usually don't frequent the Win, but they went there for that because it was such a special thing. And then to have Andrew take it down was also very special. And then just the live events. I mean, I'm looking back at just the events that PokerNews reported in 2021. And it's like, damn, it is back. Like live poker returned, or at least we covered plenty. And there are certainly events that we didn't cover as well. The Run Good Poker Series got back. In fact, they're just finishing up their season here this month. The Grand Poker Series at the Golden Nugget returned. The Win had spring, summer, and fall classics. And this is just basically talking about stuff in the U.S. There was even some stuff that happened, the Party Poker Live Millions in North Cyprus. I think there was some stuff in Sochi over there in Russia. And so to have this live return mixed with some online offerings that are still happening, I think it's been a pretty productive year. And then, of course, Sarah, like you said, the big story is the World Series of Poker return, both in Vegas in the fall and then the World Series of Poker Europe to Kings Rosvedov. And that, I guess, is the real indicator, right? Like you couldn't say live poker has returned until the World Series of Poker was back. And it was 8 weeks. It was a success. The numbers were down slightly. They had the vaccination proof requirement and things like that. But, I was there. I'm walking away thinking like, all right, that was pretty much normal.
And I think what was really interesting, so, Lynn Gilmartin is one of my other closest friends, and we've just been talking as one does periodically throughout the year. And actually, not only was poker back, but it was back with record-breaking numbers for most of the WPTs, in fact, that we were at that we weren't at. In Florida, South Florida was popping off like poker just exploded in a gigantic firework in Florida. And I definitely, once that happened, I said, okay, people are ready. We're ready to do this. The numbers were down slightly in Vegas because of the requirement, but I think had it not been, they might have been off the charts.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say live poker is back. I know pretty much every poker tour, every poker venue are ramping up their plans for 2022. We already know the World Series of Poker is going back to its normal summer slot and that it's going to relocate to Bally's in Paris, which I think is pretty exciting in and of itself. That could potentially be a big story of 2022, come this time next year. I'm very interested to see how that happens. And then, the Win Millions, like I said, will be back. The tours are all, it's just, 2020, look, that was hard for everybody, not just in poker, but around the world. 2021 was all about getting back on our feet, I'd say. And hopefully 2020 is where we start to, ramp up the speed on the treadmill and get things running again. And, but it was definitely exciting to see poker return to the live realm in 2021. Sarah, before we get to our last story of this episode, I know you want to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors in D&B Publishing.
D&B have many wonderful books written by established experts and stars of the poker world. Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, The Essential Guide, is a landmark in poker publishing and undoubtedly the definitive guide to tournament poker. Modern Poker Theory, this truly remarkable book, is the ultimate guide to no-limit hold'em poker based on GTO principles. Jonathan Little's Excelling at Tough No-Limit Hold'em Games, a must-have book if you have ambitions to move up the stakes. Poker Brat, this autobiography is a fascinating insight into the highs and lows of Phil Hellmuth's life, as well as an insight into the tips and techniques Phil used to set and achieve his life goals. Why Alex Beats Bobby at Poker, a journey through human psychology, game theory, easy-to-understand mathematics, and even philosophy. Mastering small stakes cash games, in this brand new book, publishing soon, renowned poker coach Evan Jarvis will show you how you too can achieve your goals to become a better cash player. Go to D&B Poker for full details on these and many other titles.
All right, we are back to talk about our last story of this episode. Remember, we'll be back next week to talk about the top 5 stories of 2021. But number 6, was the Super High Roller Bowl Europe and the stories that emerged out of there, specifically the return or, the success of Tony G. Now, the Super High Roller Bowl Europe ran back in August, late August into September 1st. It took place at the Marriott Royal Hotel and Casino in Cyprus, and it was comprised of 8 events. Right out the get-go, it got off to a big start when Phil Ivey took down event number 1. That was the $25,000 short deck hold'em. He defeated Stephen Chidwick heads up for over $400,000. And look, anytime you can just get Phil Ivey to an event, it's a big story, let alone getting him to win one. And so I think that's really what put a lot of eyes on the Super High Roller Bowl Europe. And from there, the stories continued. Johan Gilbert took down event number 2 as 25K no limit hold'em. And then Tony G, who I mentioned, won the 25K short deck hold'em. It would be his first of 2 short deck titles. He would win another one in a few days after that. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But $382,000. So to see Tony G, formerly of PokerNews. He's no longer associated with PokerNews, but one of the founders from the early days of the game. He was a character during the poker boom days, left the game largely to focus on politics and becoming part of parliament in Lithuania. He's done with that. He's back in the poker world. He's looking a lot slimmer, a lot trimmer, and it reflected in his play as he took down that title. Then you had Salhaddin Badir taking down the 50K no limit hold'em event number 4. Santi Jiang took down the 50K short deck event number 5. Event number 6 was 100K no limit hold'em. Artur Matarosian defeated David Peters heads up to win that one for $1.4 million. And then Tony G back at it. He won the 100K event number 7 short deck hold'em event, defeated Paul Foy in that one to win it for almost $1.2 million. So you had Tony G taking down 2 titles, 2 Super High Roller Bowl Europe titles for about $1.5 million. Victor Malinowski, big time online guy, took down the main event there, $250,000 Super High Roller Bowl Europe. He won that for almost $3.7 million. And then Seth Davies rounded it out, took down event number 8, a 50K no limit hold'em, defeated Jake Schindler heads up for $435,000. So all around, a great series, and it just took place at a time of the year before the World Series of Poker had rolled around. The World Series of Poker online events had wrapped up. So Phil Ivey, Tony G having that kind of success, it just made for a lot of fun. There were live streams, and it's for that reason, Sarah, that it made it all the way to number 6 on our top stories of 2021.
I'm so curious what your thoughts are. I'm a huge fan of the Super High Roller Bowl just in general. It just always brings out, I think, the best poker players. It's players playing for massive amounts of money, which I think is always super interesting. It's just very well produced. I just love the Super High Roller Bowl. And I think it was one of the first, I remember, was it like the 300K we saw? It was just like when they first introduced it, it had such hurrah. And ever since then, it's been kind of like a little darling of mine, a little favorite. But then to see Tony G come in, and I'm curious what you think, because these are the best and, most practiced and studied probably poker players of our time. Of course, there's always some businessmen up in the mix also, but it's interesting to see Tony G kind of fly in here, haven't seen you guys in a while, lost some weight, new hair, who this, and then he ships a couple events. I mean, what does that say about, I guess, poker players? Do you think that there's anything to be taken from that?
I do. I think it harkens back to what he used to say. You got to show heart. You got to have heart. And I like the thought that showing heart and some shoot spot in poker can beat the GTO robots, can beat these young guys who might not have that same charisma, might not show that same heart that a guy like Tony G does. He is a character of the game. And I love it when I see a guy like him come in and show that he still has it, that he can still compete, and that he can win it with some of his old school abilities. We see Phil Hellmuth doing that. Mike Matisow talks about it a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that GTO and that kind of play is a big part of poker nowadays, and you kind of have to know that a little bit. But it just does go to show you that a guy like Tony G can come in, can compete just by showing, a little heart, as he likes to say.
A little heart and commitment, dude. You got to have the heart and commitment. He's a legend to me of the game, and definitely the kind of player that I just really admire. And also, I barely recognized him at first. I was like, who's this skinny mini over here? What's going on? And I think if you guys haven't, you can definitely follow along. There was a lot of juicy drama around his period in Parliament. He, I think, was a very divisive but very interesting and really the same way he was in the poker world, he was also that in the politics world. And so he was interesting, if nothing else. And we have a lot of Lithuanian friends. And so it was just interesting to get all their perspectives. And I welcome him back to poker with open arms.
Yeah, I do as well. So that is our stories 6 through 10 of the 2021 WSOP. Number 6, Super High Roller Bowl Europe with Tony G's success. Number 7 was the return of live poker. Number 8 was our in memoriam, remembering those we lost in 2021. Number 9 was the launch of Michigan online poker. And number 10 was the introduction of ClubGG. We've got 5 more great stories coming up in next week's episode, and they're big ones. Obviously, they're the top 5. Helmuth is going to be there. Negrani is going to be there. World Series of Poker Talk is going to be there. And we're going to talk about a guy who really took 2021 by storm. If anybody owned 2021, it was this guy that we're going to talk about next week. So definitely tune in for that. And then Sarah, we've got some big plans for 2022, do we not? You're on mute.
That's right. PokerNews Podcast 2.0, guys. That kind of stuff will definitely not happen when we get to PokerNews Podcast 2.0. We've got a bunch of stuff coming for you guys in 2022, a lot of stuff in the works. We're trying to just clean this up, give our audience the absolute best, the best possible both video and audio production that we can get for you guys. So look forward to that. And I look forward to next week delivering you guys the top 5 stories of 2021. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like, rate, and review all of that. We always really appreciate it. We appreciate our loyal audience very much. Chad Holloway, I'm Auntie Chardonnay. You guys are with us on PokerNews.com. Deuces.